everyone. So this is the first influencer panel of BlogHer Food. I'm excited to be here and to be moderating this panel. My name is Kendra Bracken Ferguson, and I am a lifer of BlogHer. I've been participating since 2006, so every time I get the call, I am like running and jumping to get there and to be part of you all today. So I'm excited to be here. We have an amazing panel for you. We're going to be talking about how do you monetize your content? How do you create product lines? How do you expand beyond just one post? It's a subject that is really near and dear to my heart. I've been working in the social media. Do you guys want to sit down? I'm sorry. And you're
I would love to.
You're like, she's doing 6 weeks. I'm like, sorry. I was standing and then I'll sit. This subject is really near and dear to me. I've been working in the social media space since 2002, 2003 with MySpace, if any of you were around and remember that and still have your profiles. I traveled all over the world, China, Europe, Korea, doing these digital boot camps and immersions. I was then recruited to go to Ralph Lauren. I was their first director of digital media, so I launched them on social. I'd spend 3 hours with David Lauren just looking at blogs, and at that time I met my first business partner, Karen Rabinovitz. We texted each other on Saturday. We said we have this idea to launch a company. It became Digital Brand Architects, DBA, which I know a lot of you know. We got our husbands together Sunday, filed for an LLC Monday. I went to David Lauren and said, I am going to manage bloggers. That was in 2009, and nobody even really knew what that meant. Fast forward, as a lot of you know, DBA was acquired by UTA. Very exciting. Rayna is leading that, did a great job. I left and started a company called Brain Trust. Through Brain Trust, I work with Halle Berry. She's my client. Kelly Ripa helped her launch her home line. Just Water with Will Smith. Drew Barrymore with Dear Drew. And my company got acquired by CAA's Global Brands Group. So it's been a long ride for me. Last year, we launched our influencer data mapping tool, which is a marketing and advertising solution to help brands and influencers come together to track ROI. So when we talk about being a real OG in the space I am, and what I'm excited about today is how do you evolve? How do you go beyond just creating content to post on your blog or Instagram every day? And my panelists, they are true experts. They're geniuses, and they have all been there and done that. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And then we're going to do a Q&A when we have about 15 minutes left. So make sure to get all of your questions ready and make sure you're using our hashtag BlogHer19. So let's get started. We're going to do some introductions. And I have to say, Rayna is amazing. If you're not listening to her podcast, I was like dying all morning in the shower. So we'll start with you, Rayna.
I'm happy to have spent the shower with you this morning. Hi guys, I'm Rayna Greenberg, and you are a tough act to follow, but I'll try to sum up what I do. So I have the food and travel blog, One Hungry Jew, which is exactly what it sounds like. And I started that 4 years ago, and it's around 360,000 followers now. So I've taken photos of food and when I travel as well. And after a few years, I took the audience that I had built and parlayed it into a podcast. So I'm the co-host of a podcast called Girls Gotta Eat. It's not what it sounds like. It's actually about dating and relationships and sex. We're a top 20 comedy show on iTunes and Spotify. So if you listen, thank you. If you don't, check it out. We do a lot of live shows and touring around the country. So typically my audience is drunk and at and in a very dark comedy club. So this is different for me. But I have been doing this full time for about 4 years. I left my job at Amazon to really do social media, and what I really needed to do was figure out a way to monetize that. So I guess we'll talk about that today and how you can actually make a profit from your audience.
Great, thank you. Rachel.
Hi everyone, my name is Rachel Mansfield. I am the food blogger and recipe developer behind the brand Rach L. Mansfield. The name has nothing to do with food, it's just the name my parents gave me. I focus on creating recipes that are made with whole foods and real ingredients, and I want everyone to be able to eat food that makes them feel good, but at the same time actually taste good. I don't want anyone to feel like they have to just eat kale and drink green juice to be healthy. You can have banana bread and cookies and still feel good about yourself. I've been doing this for 4 years now, 3 years full time. I started this really, I felt like I wasn't making enough money in the job that I was in. And I was managing the blogger and social media department at a healthy beverage company in the space, and started this brand on the side. I saw that blogging was really going to be something in a few years, and I was fired from that job and kind of forced me to go out on my own, and haven't looked back in the last three and a half years now, which is crazy. And I have my first cookbook coming out 1 year from now, called Just the Good Stuff with Clarkson Potter. So I'm super excited.
Hey, congratulations.
Thank
2020,
you.
we'll all be looking.
Yeah, February 11th.
Allie.
Hi, I'm Allie Maffucci. I'm the founder of Inspiralized, which is the ultimate resource for cooking with the spiralizer, which I'm sure everyone knows now is the kitchen tool that turns veggies and fruits into noodles. And if I sound out of breath, it's because there's a baby pressing on my lungs. So if I have to keep breathing really heavily, that's why. So my brand started off as a food blog, and since then it's evolved over the past 6 years to my blog still exists, obviously, with free daily recipes, but I launched my own product called the Inspiralizer, which I thought was a cute name for my spiralizer, which we design, manufacture, distribute, sell. I have a mobile iOS app that's a downloadable recipe app. I've written New York Times best-selling cookbooks. I have 3 of them. And I most recently launched Inspiralized Kids, which is a little extension off of Inspiralize, where I offer healthy recipes for kids. I have a 19-month-old and obviously another one on the way. And I've been having a lot of fun with that. And I also have another extension of my brand called Inspiralized Alley, which is the kind of lifestyle component where I've been able to really engage with that side of my community for the other mothers and women who are interested in more of the lifestyle aspect and less of just strictly food. But I still love spiralizing. I'm still going strong. So day to day, I'm running Inspiralized.
So that's great. So I love for the panelists to introduce themselves so that you can really get a feel of who they are and why they started, and you can hear the passion when they talk about what they're doing. And I think passion is so important whenever you want to start your own business, but it's also about perspective and point of view, which each of you have. So I think let's dive in and start with brand partnerships, because one thing that we all have in common is we had jobs and we left jobs to do what we love. And it's less about brands saying, I want to partner with an influencer. It's more about what does that partnership mean and why is it important? And so for each of you, when you think about working with brands, what does that look like? How do you even start the conversation with the brand, and how do you create partnerships? Rachel, do you want to start?
Sure. Well, definitely the space has, I'm sure as you guys know, really evolved over the last few years. When I first had started this and was looking to monetize my own brand by working with other brands, most companies didn't have budgets at that time. And especially for my own brand in particular, I focus really on whole foods and organic and non-GMO. And most of those companies that you find in Whole Foods, they weren't putting budget aside to pay bloggers and influencers, and that just didn't exist at the time. So when I first started, I was really pitching myself out to brands and telling them, like, this is what I could offer you and X, Y, and Z, and this is how much I would expect in return. And that's really evolved over the last three years now. And for me personally, I work with brands all on like long-term partnerships. So everything's like from a 6 to 12 month basis. And what I do for them really varies based off of their like key objectives and what they're looking to get out of the partnership. It's very not cookie cutter for my business.
Well, and it's interesting that you've set those parameters. I think knowing what you will do and what you won't do. So if you notice, Rachel mentioned 6 to 12 months. A lot of what we're finding with brands is that you get more value whenever you have the long-term relationship.
It's very true. I mean, for a while, I do have to really push brands to say, like, no, we need a 6-month partnership, because they say, well, how do we know it's going to be successful? And I go, I don't know any one-off posts or 1-month partnerships that are successful, because I spend so much time getting to know the product, the brand, the culture of that brand, learning it from the inside out. So to do one post for them and then introduce them to my community that I've worked so hard to create and then never talk about them again just doesn't make sense to me. I want everything to be very consistent and ongoing, and I think that's why these products resonate really well with my community, because they know it's a very like authentic relationship that I have with the brand.
And that's crucial, especially being authentic, so that your audience knows, because that's what it's all about. And Rayna, for you, because you do have such a distinct personality from the blog to the podcast, I mean, I have to say you guys do an excellent job of integrating partners into the podcast, and from what I've seen on your site. So what does that look like for you, and how do you decipher between kind of your two personalities that are very much connected?
Well, for me, when I pick a brand to work with, I start to think to myself, does this make sense for me? I'm a millennial female. I'm 33. I'm single. You know, is this a brand that makes sense for me to be advertising? Am I proud of this brand? Am I excited to promote it? I think that it's really easy, and people are really adept at seeing straight through inauthenticity today. And if it's not really a product you would use, I also think that when somebody comes to me, I think to myself, can I create great content around this? So we have a partnership with Postmates for social media and the podcast as well. And so that's a really fun thing that I thought, okay, me and my co-host can do a cool photo shoot at home with a bunch of food in our robes, and that makes sense for my brand. I don't take on partnerships with like a pharmaceutical company that like would sell like a men's focused product, because that's ridiculous. So I think that it's so great that you think long-term, and the way to create those long-term partnerships is this the right brand for me? Does it make sense for me to sell it? Am I excited about selling it? Can I create great content? And then telling the brand what that content is. So for example, I don't create videos, ever. I don't ever make videos. I know if I posted one, it would be really weird and out of the blue, and my audience they're not gonna interact with it the way that they would interact with somebody else's. So if a brand comes to me and insists on videos, that's not my brand. And the content is not going to perform well. It's a waste of their money. I don't want to waste their money. And I want to create these really long-term partnerships. So if something doesn't perform well, it's only going to be bad for me, because they'll cancel a partnership. And you really want to focus on these really long-term integrations, which is great. Does that answer your question?
It really does, and I think there's so many great points there. Being true to who you are as a content creator is important. A lot of times when you're starting out, or even when you're established, you're like, I need to monetize, I need to make money. And so sometimes you lose sight of what made you great in the beginning. So I think that's such a great takeaway, to say, I don't do video, I'm not gonna do it, and to be able to walk away is really crucial. And Allie, you know, for you, you've created your own brand. So how does that fit? Are you still working with brand partners? You've been able to diversify and still be spiralized. So how do you determine brand partnerships separate from your own brand and then across your platforms?
Yeah, definitely. So it's funny because I do have a product. So in that sense, I will work with other influencers and bloggers and send them my product. We don't do any like paid sponsored posts or things like that with our product, but just from being a food blogger and being friends, you know, making friends in the space, naturally that's been really great for me, because all of my food blogging friends use the Inspiralizer and they recommend it.
It's amazing.
Thank you. So that's been really great. But I still do brand partnerships, and very similar to Rachel and Rayna and other influencers, it's mainly long-term. I like to test everything out and kind of show behind the scenes. So what I've been able to do now as my brand has evolved, and I had mentioned before, having Inspiralized Kids and having Inspiralized Allie, I've been able to diversify the brand partnerships. So for Inspiralized Allie, for example, I got to, as I became a mother, and then I'm a mother to a toddler who was eating, I got to engage with all these great brands I didn't know about, and sign up for longer-term brand partnerships with them. So like an Ergo Baby, or Fisher Price, or Easy Peasy Mad, or now currently I'm starting to work with Bugaboo. So all these different brands where I have that level of partnerships, and I show the behind the scene. Like right now I'm being very vocal about, I don't know what to do about a double stroller now that I'm gonna have two babies who need to be in a stroller, and I'm doing research, and even though it's not paid, so I won't get paid for the behind the scenes, I kind of like, that's just organic and genuine to me. So I do a lot of things on my social that I'm not paid for, just because I think grows more authenticity with your audience because they see all of this stuff and it's not all ad, because it's not all ad. I'm just doing it to show behind the scenes. So that and Inspiralized Kids, I'll do sponsored work with brands like Applegate who make, organic, natural products that I can feed to my baby. And then with Inspiralize, I have long-term partners since the beginning for 6 years, like Bob's Red Mill. So it's been, and like Simply Organic. So I do the same sort of stuff, just I segment it more.
Well, and that's really interesting with the segmentation and doing things because it's right for your community and because it's right for you and because you can test it. I think that's what really creates longevity for 6 years. And so one of the things that I want to talk about, especially as you look at all of the different components and the different brands you're working with, is money. It's always hard to ask for money. It's hard to negotiate for yourself. You want to be friends with the brands that support you. You're naturally going to use the product. So let's talk about that. How do you ask, and do you represent yourself? Do you want to start, Rayna?
Yeah. So for a long time, I did represent myself. Currently, I have a manager, but it's very back and forth on what we want to charge. The really tough thing about social media advertising is that it's not regulated the way that advertising on a podcast or radio or television is, where you have a specific listener number, there's a direct dollar amount that you ask for that, and that's just the same across the board. In social media, it's all over the place. The thing that's really hard to do is ask for money for yourself, and really believe that there's a value, because I think some people will look at social media and say that's silly or that's stupid, but you have such an authentic voice and your recommendation is so much better and means so much more than a magazine ad or a television commercial. And there's real value in that. People follow you because they like you as a person and you're recommending something, which is also important to pick brands that are good. But it took me a really long time to accept the value of what I had. And so I would take $100 for something or $200 for something, and I'd let them dictate what the content is. I would, first of all, ask other people in the space what they're charging. And I think it's really important that we're all super transparent about it. So I honestly talked to other food bloggers about what they were charging, and I knew that we were probably being approached by similar brands. So I just said, what are you charging? Because if somebody goes back to a brand and offers $1,000 when I'm bidding $6,000, I'm not going to get that deal. But if we both go back at $5,000, then they have no choice but to give you the money. So I think that there isn't a hard, fast dollar number in social media, but the best advice I could give is ask around. I'm sure there's a lot of information on the internet today about things like that, and there's value in everything. So don't let people ask you to throw in an Instagram story or throw in a swipe up link. There's value in all of those things, and you should really ask for money and be comfortable asking for it because you built this audience.
Yeah, I think that, that advice is so great, and especially to ask around. I think that we try not to talk about it, but we know that the conversations are being had, and we as content creators should talk about it so that as we're going to brands, we're a unified front. If one person allows it to happen, then it sets a ripple effect for everyone else. And I believe that there's a difference between doing things organically, as Ali mentioned, and someone telling you, shoot a video, tag my channel, 5 posts, go to a photo shoot, in which you should charge and you should know the value. And as an industry, we have to set that. And Rachel, really for you, I think it's exciting. I go through your feed and I'm like, that's so cool. That's so cool. Everything that you're doing. How do you find value? How do you value yourself as you're talking to your brand partners?
I think that if you guys recall, I mentioned I did start my brand because I felt undervalued when I was working for a full-time company. I do believe that my gut really does lead the way. If I feel that a brand is lowballing me and they're not seeing the value in what I'm able to provide for them, I won't collaborate with them. But at the same time, I really do recognize that in the space that I'm in, a lot of these companies are small startup companies, and they don't necessarily have budget. They don't have funding. Like, their funds are really going to distribution. They're going to get their product on shelves, and yeah, paying someone to post about them on Instagram definitely isn't a top priority. But now the brands are seeing that really could be their top priority. I should say they in the past they didn't see that as a top priority. Now they see that by someone posting about it and getting them exposure, that's going to help them grow their business. So I think that for me, if I know that the brand, if I trust them, I believe in their product, if it's a rate that I'm not going to usually accept, a lot of the times I do accept it, and they recognize that. And when they're growing and they are in that scale up mode and no longer in startup mode, they then do compensate me what I'm asking for, because they know that I trusted them from the beginning. So you could have like the value that you think you stand for, but at the same time, you need to kind of trust your gut. And if you really love a product, it's not just about the money. It's because you love the product and you want to help them grow.
Yeah, some of the best advice I have received has been like, be driven by creativity and what you love in your gut, and the money will follow. And I think that that's a really great point in thinking about brands, and especially if you know your brand so well, and the small, organic, non-GMO brands are important, and to be able to understand the long-term vision is as they grow, then I'm going to be compensated with them. That's really key, and I think that that's important, because what we're doing is we're building our careers and we're building our futures. So we can't just be in that moment and make decisions without the long-term vision. So Rachel, I think that's really important.
Thank you. And I had one other, like I just saw someone in the front row eating like a Hue Kitchen chocolate bar, and I started grinning because I used to post about them completely organically for years. And now I partner with them because they saw that I was helping them grow in that sense. And it's, now I'm able to work with them for like on a monetary basis, but by posting about them and just loving them organically from the beginning, it pays off.
Yeah, they say some of the best ways to get attention for your site is to organically post about brands. So that's a good tip. And Allie, just in terms of, you, again, we'll talk about your product more, but you have a New York Times bestselling book. You have multiple sites. Are your rates based site by site? Are they based for the overall brand? How do you look at everything that you're working on and determine rates?
Yeah, so it's actually been very interesting, and it's something that doesn't have to be a set rate every time, and it's going to obviously change just depending on what the campaign is. Brands ask for different things. Some people just want an Instagram post, and that'll be a different rate than an Instagram post and a story over 6 months. But I would say for me, it's been really great because I can say, on my different channels, I have different success. So with Instagram stories for Inspiralized, a lot of brands want to be featured on Inspiralized because there's over 200,000 followers, and on Inspiralized Alley, it's really like 32,000 followers. But the Instagram stories views are higher on Inspiralized Alley. So what I do is I just communicate this all to the brand, and I find that when you approach brands, it's really important when you're justifying your rate, not just being like, oh no, I'm only gonna, I won't go lower than 10,000 or 1,000. You need to say, because I get X amount of views on IG story, look at this previous brand I worked with. I had, 5,000 swipe up links and like a 20% conversion purchase rate. Like if you give them that information and you're not just I find that a lot of people they throw out rates and they're like, oh, it's $4,000 for an Instagram post. But if you actually back it up with information, the brand's like, wow, I didn't even know that could be possible. Yes, I'm going to give you that money. And also, and I know I'm just like getting off the topic of your question, but I find hopping on the phone, and I'm a millennial and I hate the phone. My husband's older than me and he doesn't text and it kills me. Like I much prefer email and text. But when you hop on the phone with some of these brands and you realize they're just like you and me and they're similar age, they're pretty much all women, and you talk to them and you're like, listen, this is, and again, like giving examples of other similar brands, and you tell them they're nice people and they want to work with you. It's just hard to justify to their boss. So when you get them on your team, I think it works in your benefit. That's worked for me a lot, at least.
If I can piggyback off of something that you said, sorry.
Please.
I'm Jewish, I talk a lot. I think that it sounds sort of self-explanatory, but really not just understanding your numbers, but also your brand is a really easy way to sell and add value. So I know from my podcast, I have like a 90% female audience. So it's really easy for me to go to a brand that wants to sell to women and say, not only do I have these kind of numbers, but I have a specific type of number that you want. So my audience lives in urban cities. They are educated. They have jobs. They are usually millennial females, so I'm selling a very specific package, and that I think in addition to the views and the numbers, adding in those demographics really helps sell and increase the number that you can ask for.
That's a great point. I'm glad that you brought that up because I was going to ask you guys, what tools are you using? Knowledge is power. And if you can communicate and educate the brands on the why, like, so what tools are you using when you're going back and saying, I get this conversion and this engagement that the audience can take back?
I mean, things like Google Analytics, Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook Analytics, they all have very well built out analytical systems, and there's a lot of guides on how to use them. You'd be surprised how much information you can just pull from the platform's, innate systems. I use Reward Style, and they have they show you exactly what your conversion rate is on that. All the swipe up statistics on Instagram. Google Analytics for demographics. I do a lot of polling of my audience, and I save it all so that when I go to brands, sometimes I'm like, I did this poll 3 months ago, and 99% of people said that they wanted recommendations on sports bras. I don't know, And so if I'm going to pitch to partner with a sports bra company, it's like, wow, like that's valuable because as Rayna said, the brand wants to make sure that they're getting as most interested views as possible, not just like views, right? And that's why micro-influencers are really popular too, because the smaller amount of people, they're just more engaged now and they're more, invested.
That's important. I just think it's great. I love how you talked about communicating, especially if you're representing yourself or even with your manager and being able to validate why someone's paying you is important. So before we go to Q&A, so get your questions ready, I do want to talk, Allie, about going from a content creator into creating your own product. I think that is, there's so many influencers that say, I want to create my own product, and actually doing it, it's a leap of faith, but it's also different than creating content daily. So talk to the audience. What have you learned? How did you start?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, I have the Inspiralizer, which is our proprietary spiralizer product. So when I use it on my social channels, so when I'm content creating, I'm always using my my product, obviously. So it's content marketing, which is like the best form of marketing. And I would say, for me, it made sense to launch a spiralizer. When I first started off, I actually thought about doing a licensing deal with the current brand that was the biggest one on the market, and I actually met with the president and CEO, and I was like, I just want to put the Inspiralized logo on your product. I'm currently using it. I was like, it's okay, but that's just the lowest hanging fruit. And I got a real icky feeling in that meeting. The man didn't take me seriously. I was like 2 months into Inspiralize, and I'm like, I'm going to make this amazing. Everyone's going to spiralize because of me. And he was like, what? He didn't take me seriously at all. So I left that feeling very dejected and kind of, unenthusiastic. And I talked, to my husband, and who's also an entrepreneur, and he's like, why are you reaching for the lowest hanging fruit? Make your own, make the best one. You don't like the one that's out there now. So what I did was I had no idea how to make a product. I didn't come from a product background. And I just started asking around. I asked around in Facebook groups for recommendations, like online Facebook groups for entrepreneurs. I asked friends. I asked family. And I found out that one of my family friends actually manufactures products and does licensing with kitchen tools. I'm like, wow, if I hadn't asked, I think he was like the 25th person I asked. And so I went to him with a PowerPoint presentation. I was excited. I was like, this is my Inspiralizer. I need your help. I need your guidance. I sketched, the Inspiralizer out. I said, this is what it's going to do. I had all my statistics in there, like, why I thought it was going to work and sell. I had just also gotten my cookbook deal. So he partnered with me and led me through the whole process. Aside from learning the marketing, sales, and actually fulfillment part of it, I learned all that. Everything from designing my own box. I would just stay up all night learning Adobe Photoshop and InDesign and all those programs because I couldn't afford to spend thousands of dollars on box design. I found the cheapest fulfillment center I could at the time. I learned all those things, but I asked, anytime I ran into something that was like a roadblock, I would just ask for help. I asked for so much help, and people luckily gave it to me. So my business partner helped me manufacture the product and get it in the final form. And obviously then we fulfilled it, distribute it, and we sell it. But what I would say to people who want to go from content creating to a product, there's other ways than just like actually building a product. There's so many exciting ways to get there before your own product. There's so many great examples of people who, if you're in a niche, think about that niche and what kind of product you could create about it. And good examples are Gina from Skinny Taste. She's one of my good food blogging friends. And she always tells me, she's like, you're just so great with this product thing. I just don't know what I should do. And as she developed her recipes, she was like, wow, people really like air frying. And there's not a good enough air fryer that's small and compact and has all these specific settings. So she just announced that she is doing a licensing deal. It's part licensing, part design on her part with Remy and making an air fryer. So she doesn't have to deal with distribution and fulfillment and box design. They're doing that all for her. Amber Fillerup, who's the barefoot blonde, she came out with her own hair extensions because people loved her braided hair videos. So it's kind of like, think what your niche is and what your audience really, really likes. I know that Rachel partnered with a chocolate company and created her own flavor of chocolate as another way to partner with a brand. It was a really successful campaign for the brand, and I hope Rachel. But there's just other ways you can do it, and just think about, okay, this is what my audience really, really likes. How can I make an extension of this? And how can I capitalize on this audience that I've built and really wants my recommendations and is purchasing all these products like my hair extensions and my air fryers and my spiralizers that I'm recommending? Because at first, that's how I made all my money. I got $1 for every spiralizer I was affiliate linking to, and I'm like, I'm giving too much money to the man. I got to make this money myself, and I can make so much more. So that'd be my advice. Just kind of think about your audience and what they gravitate towards most, and how you can build a product or a partnership with a current product manufacturer.
And it was so smart. You keep talking about communicating with people, educating yourself, and I think that's how we all grow and evolve. And Rachel, before we go into question, and Rayna, I also want to talk about podcast. And even for you, you have your book coming out, so you're doing partnerships. We were going to talk about the chocolate. So what's the piece of advice that you'd also give to the audience in terms of going into this product space?
Be strategic about it. I'm approached by a lot of brands that I collaborate with to do like co-branded products together, whether that's like a nut butter or, like in this case, the chocolate. And I think some people, you get so excited that you can almost like overdo it. And I would love to have a product on every single shelf that's in Whole Foods, but I'm trying to be very strategic about what that is, because I think that you work so hard to create a brand and a name for yourself, so you almost don't want to like slut it out in that sense. You want to do it, and you want to do it right.
You want to protect it.
Exactly. And you want to like show that like it means something. So I think a lot of people can get very consumed about creating the product, and you need to make sure it's right for your brand, and it's also going to be long term. From my personal experience, when I did the chocolate one, it was temporary, and I was under the assumption going into it that it was going to be like evergreen, like it was going to keep going. And then they're like, no, we're going to make X amount of like batches or whatever, and then it's done, and it's sold out in a couple weeks. And I'm like, well, that's a buzzkill. So looking back, I should have made sure that was going to, like, we were all under the same impression. But it's exciting. I love products. I love working with brands, so I love the opportunities, but definitely have to be strategic about it.
And I just want to piggyback on what she said. It's so hard to, maybe it's a woman thing, but it's very hard to communicate that your confidence in your anticipated success. A similar situation happened to me where I designed a specials menu of all spiralized recipes for a large national restaurant chain that had like 250 restaurants, and my contract with them was just short term. It was, I think, like a 6-month contract. And once the menu was done, the specials menu, and the season changed, that was it. And looking back on it, now one of my recipes is permanently on their menu. And if I had licensed that properly and really valued my time and I knew it was going to be successful, my anticipated success, I could have been making this, residual passive income all this time based on this evergreen menu item. So, which
are the learnings I think that we all have in business, and where we say, okay, now
next
to go through
time
it. I know. And Rayna, with the podcast, podcasts, they're so hot right now. Yours is so unique. You mentioned you're in the top 20 on iTunes and Spotify. Like, what's your revenue model different from your content revenue model?
Like, how do I make money?
How are you making money, girl? How are you making money?
So just like on Instagram and for social, we sell ads on the show. We're extremely selective about what brands we work with, especially because we have such a big audience. I can't say enough about our audience. I love them so much, and I would never want to recommend a product that I wasn't 100% behind. So we do ads in the podcast, just like you hear on radio. They're usually like 1 minute. The brand gives you a couple talking points, and you get to sort of make jokes through it. It's a lot of fun. I like doing the ads for the show. So that's a revenue stream. We sell a little bit of merchandise. There's a lot of companies that can help you sell that'll print on demand, like Printful or Print Aura. So you can sell one t-shirt, one sweatshirt, et cetera. And then we do a lot of live performances. So as I mentioned, I'm typically in like a pitch black comedy club and everybody's drunk. So we sell tickets to those shows. And then there's also opportunities to have sponsors for those shows as well. So again, if it's somebody like Hinge, like a dating app, we'll partner with them to do a show.
And I think, it's great because as you guys are learning, the business of influence really is about creating additional monetization streams and revenue streams and being strategic, communicating with brands, and really understanding your value. When you look at the panelists here, Rayna, Allie, and Rachel, one thing that really holds true with all of them is that they understand their value, they're strategic, they learn from their mistakes, and they're able to move forward, but they have gone off of their blogs and off of their sites to really create products, line extensions, books, podcasts. So I think we would all just encourage you to look beyond just the post and to really figure out strategically what you're passionate about and all of the different ways that you can make money. So we're going to turn it over to you. I hope everyone has questions. Who's going first? Yes.
Okay, then. Okay, this is for Rachel, because you're so
Hey,
good
boo.
at this. Hello. Speaking to the valuing yourself thing, because I know my problem is kind of like I go to a brand and I'm kind of like, well, why don't I pay you instead, and I'll talk about you. So how do you have how do you pump yourself up before you go to the brands? Do you have something you say to yourself, or how do you
talk to you on the phone every day?
I know, but I want to hear it here. I don't feel like I've asked you this question.
You haven't. You gotta have confidence in yourself. Know what you work so hard to build the community that you have on Instagram or wherever your community is. So when you're talking to a brand, you gotta put your big girl pants on and you gotta sell yourself, because the more confidence that you have, the more seriously a brand or whoever you're talking to is gonna take you. If you're like, ooh, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, they're gonna be like, oh, I could walk all over this girl, and no one can walk all over you. You know that. So just be strong and stand up for what you believe in, and I'm always here to help you. Well, 3-way call. But it's good to have just a sense of confidence, basically. You need to just be confident in yourself.
I think it's really scary to ask for money. It is. It's uncomfortable, but I think you have to remind yourself that the brand has approached you because they assume they're going to have to pay you. And this audience you build is not a charity. I mean, you can do things for charity, but you don't have to give things away for free. There's real value in what you build, and what you build is awesome, and people should pay you for it. And I know it's super uncomfortable, but if you understand the dollar amount that's associated with your account and what your audience looks like, don't feel scared to ask for money. And I know that it's scary, but just do it. Rip the Band-Aid off.
And I think too, I was gonna say one thing that I think that you guys mentioned was just having some stats. I know I've worked with someone and she had a 3% engagement rate, and the other person they were looking at had 1.6. The fact that she knew her engagement rate was higher, it was not about, let me ask you for money. It was about, here's the fact. Here's my engagement rate versus theirs. Here's what I'm worth. So I love how you were talking about stats. Sorry, go ahead.
Hey.
Hi, I'm Angel from Finding Funny blog. I was actually on a call with Elisa, which many of us know, recently about, we were talking about this job I'd applied for, and she said, walk in there with the confidence of a white man in a sweater. That was not my question, but I had to add that. Any major, massive failures that you've had throughout this journey, and how did you recover in terms of going back in and getting that confidence of the white guy in a hoodie?
A mediocre white man. Yeah.
After the failure, when you're already feeling like yay high, and have to actually address that failure?
I had a really big failure recently. So we partnered with like an online platform so you can like work out at home. And their messaging was lose 15 pounds in 30 days. And we read the ad and we put it out, and we got a ton of blowback right away from our audience saying that that is a terrible message to put out to women, that nobody should lose 15 pounds in 30 days. And I thought, I feel like I'm gonna cry. I felt so bad. It was a terrible message, and I felt so bad that we did it. And so in the next episode, number one, we apologized to the audience because it is just a weird message to put out that anybody should lose that kind of weight in that amount of time. And we told the brand that we're happy to keep working with you, but the messaging cannot continue. So I think just admitting your faults and knowing that you're gonna fail. I fail all the time. And I hope that was a good answer to your question. But yeah, just being upfront and honest and saying, hey, I'm a human, I fuck up too, I think is the best thing to do.
Hi, ladies. Thank you so much for coming. Hi, Allie. My name is Lillian Daniels from the Bali Bead, and my question is with regards to licensing. Thank you so much for giving the recommendation on not creating your own product from scratch, but where would you recommend we seek, insight in terms of the specifics in creating agreements without having to hire a lawyer that might completely wipe out the benefits and the revenue we get from the deal? But if you're starting out, where would you recommend we get information on setting terms?
Definitely. I mean, my biggest recommendation is to get a lawyer because I've been burned, and in the end, if I'd gotten a lawyer, it wouldn't have been burned and it would have been a lucrative partnership. And sometimes it's kind of like chicken before the egg. But there's a lot of resources online, and if you're not already, you can pretty much find a Facebook group for anything, any niche business. I mean, from selling your knitwear to food blogging to I know there's a licensing Facebook group because I'm part of it. And if you just post the question in there, people will run to help you. Ask around at networking events, obviously. But if you do Google licensing agreements, you can find just like a blank template just to read for your own knowledge, kind of like what it means. But it's so hard to navigate. Licensing is really tough because you're giving your brand name to someone, to another brand. And that's, like Rachel said, you've worked so hard with Bali Bead and you don't want to tarnish that at all. So licensing is, while it's a great stepping stone before launching your own product and a way to test the market and their interest in your brand, you gotta really, really be careful with it. But definitely, the Facebook groups are great. I learned everything through all my Facebook groups. I started 2 of my own Inspiralized Facebook groups. My favorite Facebook group is my Inspiralized Mamas group right now. I'm like in it every day.
I'm obsessed. It's so helpful.
It really helps me like from day one to now. So hope that helps.
I just want to add one thing for everyone. I know that it feels like legal counsel is expensive. Legal and finance, when you're starting a business, are 2 of the most important things that you can do to guarantee long-term success. And you don't have to go out and get a $500 an hour lawyer. There's LegalZoom that also has legal consultants that are much cheaper. But just make sure that you protect yourself and you protect your deal, especially in licensing, because there are pitfalls that you just won't know no matter how much you read. And you can even be creative. Like maybe there's an equity split that you do in addition to a fee. So just get into the groups and study. But finance and legal are so important when you're creating a business.
So one more question.
Thank you. I appreciate what you said about, scaling up and so on, but how do you build, like when you approach the brands, like how do you have a huge audience already, or because they're going to give you audience, but when you're in that chicken and egg and you go to approach them, how do you monetize that when you're not wheels up yet?
Oh, I love this question. Is it okay? Okay. So when I was first doing this full time, my Instagram following was around I would say 10,000 followers, which I thought was epic, and I still think it is because it's better than 0. But I really had to map it out for the brand. This is why you should be paying me, and this is what you're going to be getting out of it. So For some, no, it wasn't so that they can get in front of X amount of people. It was so that they could get recipe development so that they could then use in their email newsletters or on their social media and find ways to diversify what you're offering instead of just like your reach or whatever it is on social media. Maybe like if, for example, if someone is like a nutritionist or an RD, like they might be looking for in-house help with that. Like if you're trying to start a brand where you can like help their company and talk about their products. So really figure out how to diversify would be huge.
Also, you can, there's other ways to work with brands, not just sponsored. There's like a lot of affiliate programs that brands have. So maybe they don't have an affiliate program, or you can suggest that they start an affiliate program. We have one for the Inspiralizer. It took me 5 minutes to set up in a program called Share a Sale. So it's very easy for the brand to do, and it's something you could suggest to them if they don't have a budget. You can say, well, if you're interested in starting an affiliate program, I'd be happy to be one of your affiliates and help promote your brand that way. I did that with a brand when I first started, and now they're like the top third contributor to my annual revenue from my blog just through affiliate sales. And my number one revenue stream is not sponsored posts. Obviously, because I have a product or products, but affiliate sales can be a huge, like a main revenue stream for like a lot of bloggers. It is. But I would just if you haven't looked into that, I would.
So thank you guys so much. Diversify, it's not just about how many followers you have, it's about your true skill and what you can do, whether it's creating recipes, being a chef, being a nutritionist, being a stylist, being a photographer. It's not all about the numbers. So be creative, be strategic. Make sure that you're following my lovely panelists, and we're here on social media. Enjoy the rest of your BlogHer. Thank you.
Thank you guys.